Lena here from Girl Teach Me, and today we're going to be talking about how to make a whole chicken. I promise you, this is such a budget saver. This is also going to be so good for you and your family. It's so much better for you because you're going to be cooking with the bone in, and you're going to be getting tons of good, rich collagen for your body. I'll talk about why that's important later. But if you're watching this video because you want to learn how to make a whole chicken, I promise you it could not be simpler. It's almost embarrassing to make a video about it because it's so easy. But I hope that encourages you that you can do it and it doesn't take a lot of babysitting on the stove. So let's get started. Okay, so I have a chicken from Trader Joe's. Pasture-raised is definitely the best, but I can only find that from my local farmer. But today I've got an organic one from Trader Joe's. Basically, you're gonna get it out of its package, and a lot of them are gonna come with like the giblets. So you're gonna pull this baggie out of the cavity of the chicken. I mean, people use this stuff in here, and there's a lot of research that the giblets and things like that, the organs are super good for your body. But look, you're just gonna take it into a pot. All right, so I washed my hands. I've got the chicken in the pot, and now I'm gonna fill it up about this much over the chicken with filtered water. I like to use water from my Berkey. I'm using this chicken to make chicken broth and bone broth, and I just want to use the highest quality of water possible, so that's definitely going to be my filtered water. Alright, so I've got the chicken on the stove. I've got this much water on top of it. The chicken is fully submerged, and you're going to want to kick it up to about medium, maybe even a little bit more until it starts to boil. And then once it starts to boil, kick it down a little bit, like to like a low simmer, and check it in about an hour to two, just depending on how fatty you want your broth to be. If you want your chicken broth to be really rich and buttery, I would go more towards the 2-hour mark. Just know that you might get slightly less chicken because a lot of that fat on the chicken is gonna go into the broth. But if you've never had chicken broth that's really, really flavorful and fatty, maybe go a little bit longer and see what that's like. So you're really not gonna have to baby this. It's really that simple. And once this finishes, I'm gonna get like 4 quarts of chicken broth out of it. Some other things to think about is you can add an onion in here, you can add celery, you can add carrots, you can add parsley, you can add salt, pepper. There's a lot of variation. And usually I will just save some of my vegetable scraps and actually throw them in the last like 30 minutes or so. But an onion and celery are probably hardy enough to cook from the very beginning in the broth. All right, so it's been about 2 hours and our chicken is done. I can pull it back and see that it is nice and cooked. I don't see any raw chicken whatsoever. You can also see that nice bubbly fat at the top. That's gonna be so, so good. So we're gonna go ahead and pull out the chicken, and part of it will probably fall apart. That's totally okay. We're gonna strain a lot of it out. And we are going to pick this chicken once it cools off. It has to cool off for a little while. It's smoking hot. So this is what our chicken looks like once it's cooked and gonna be cooling for a little while. All right, so we're just gonna pour this broth into this strainer. Got a baby on, so I gotta be careful. And I'll show you what this broth looks like. And we don't want to put the broth into the refrigerator hot. So we're gonna let it cool for about an hour, and then we're gonna put it into mason jars and put it in the fridge. But if you put it in the fridge when it's super hot, it will drop the temperature of your refrigerator and it will spoil some of the food in the fridge. So you definitely want to let the temperature drop. Now I've poured some of the broth over into a Dutch oven, and I am heating up onions, carrots, and celery, which is always just a good base for a soup. And I am going to be making dinner tonight with some of the broth and then using the rest to store for other recipes. of the broth into some soup for tonight. So I won't get as much as I normally do. Okay, so now I have my bones left over right here, and we've picked all the chicken. We've got the chicken broth in mason jars. So now all we're gonna do is throw these bones into the Instapot to make some bone broth. And I like to keep the skin and just all of it because it's all gonna give good flavor. So really none of the chicken is wasted. All right, and I'm gonna add just a splash of apple cider vinegar to help these bones break down a little bit. So the other thing you can do is you can throw in some extra veggies. You can throw in some vegetable scraps and kind of make a vegetable slash bone broth. But for right now, I'm just gonna fill it up with water until it's covering the bones and start it. I use water from my Berkey because it filters out fluoride and arsenic and pharmaceutical meds and all kinds of crazy stuff from your water. So I definitely wanna cook with that when I can. All right, so you are going to put the lid on. We're gonna put it to sealing, not venting. We're gonna do the soup function on 120 minutes, and we're gonna run it through 3 times. If it clicks to warm in the middle of the night, that's totally fine. So it's not something you have to baby. And after 3 rounds, you're gonna have bone broth. So with the Instapot, you always wanna make sure that it has pressure released. So I switch it to venting, nothing's happening. This little red dot is all the way down. So I know it's safe to open up. If you're even considering freezing this, just make sure you leave some room at the top so it doesn't explode the jar. All right, from just leftover bones from a whole chicken, we now have 3 mason jars full of bone broth. This is chock full of type 2 collagen, which is awesome for your joints. It contains glucosamine, which is actually a tablet that a lot of people use to prolong from having to get knee replacements. So much goodness, so much collagen. 30% of all the protein in your body is collagen, so this stuff is just liquid gold that a lot of people literally just toss into the trash. And so you can use this to make soups, you can use this for your rice. Like if you have not made rice or quinoa or anything like that with bone broth, it's next level. And if you haven't made it with bone broth that's homemade, that is a whole nother level. And you're gonna see that this stuff's gonna get solid at room temperature. That means that's the collagen. That's like the gelatin that you would use to make Jell-O, the structure. And that's what's gonna be so good for your gut as well. So thanks for joining me as we just use up this whole chicken. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you'll hit subscribe, and I hope you'll check out the description box below for anything I've talked about that could be helpful for this video. Here at Girl Teach Me, I am making videos about womanhood, and primarily womanhood at home, because if you're like me, this is just a learning curve. Like motherhood, learning how to make real food, and just create an environment that's peaceful and functional for the people that you love. It can be a lot. And so I'm hoping just to provide resources for you for that journey. So I hope that you'll stick around for more videos.